Well, Monday night, Chicago finally figured out a way to put Justin Fields in a position to win a ball game. The Bears allowed a young QB to lean on the run game, with featured touches from David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert down there, of course, in the backfield with them. On top of that, the defense taking the ball away from the Patriots quarterbacks. That wasn't a problem for them. Between Mac Jones, who started, of course, and Bailey Zappi, they took majority, of course, of the snaps there, but 3 picks between those two quarterbacks there. And that was the story. 33-14, a loss for the Patriots, but a win for the Bears. The win over the Patriots, by the way, marks the highest scoring game for the Bears with Justin Fields under center. It's also Chicago's first win in Foxborough in franchise history. Coming into last night, they were 0-4 all time. For more on this, the guy that saw it all break out last night, of course, the Pats insider, Tyler Sullivan. And Tyler, after the game, Justin Fields, he said, "I'm still growing, still getting better." Your thoughts on what he did last night to secure the W?
Yeah, I thought he was the best player on the field. You know, I don't know if that's saying much in a game, especially when you had 2 quarterbacks on the other side. But ultimately, he was everything that you hope that he can be. Obviously, there's still some rough around the edges. But to me, he is showing the Chicago Bears that he can be that franchise quarterback that they want to build around. For me, the most encouraging thing that I saw last night that differs from what we've seen over his first few starts, first whatever we want to call it, year and a quarter as the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears, they're using him on designed runs more. In this game against the Patriots, Next Gen Stats had him with 12 designed runs for 63 yards. In the 18 games prior, he only had 38 carries in that regard for 83 yards. So for me, that's what I think is encouraging. They're recognizing his talents, they're seeing what he can do well, and they're allowing him to flourish in that regard. Now, obviously, as a passer, it does need to be a little bit more refined. I actually thought he threw the ball well a little bit last night. I thought there were some throws that probably missed the mark a little bit. I actually thought he had a touchdown on a deep pass to Darnell Mooney on the right side of the end zone. I think it probably would have been for like 50 some odd yards. He just didn't put enough loft on it. It was a little bit more of a laser. If he put a little bit on that ball, Mooney had to step on his defender. To me, that's what's encouraging, though, because it's just those little tweaks. Fields saw the right thing. He just wasn't able to execute it perfectly. That's going to change with more reps and with more time and with a little bit more talent around this roster. You got to remember, they invested heavily on the defensive side of the ball. They didn't really do that much offensively over the offseason. The Chicago Bears did. If all of a sudden they recognize that Fields is the guy, this is the person they want to build around under this new regime that didn't draft him. Remember that. That's a big thing. You know, they can very easily move off of this guy that they did not claim in the NFL draft. For me, you can go into this free agency now with a quarterback on his rookie deal and kind of cater the offense around him. So for me, that's what's the most encouraging thing. I thought Fields was great last night, and it was encouraging at how they were using him specifically.
179 through the air, but 82 on the ground, as you mentioned. The legs getting it done there against the Patriots in that defense. Of course, speaking about New England, deal with the matrix situation here, Tyler. Red pill or blue pill, Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. If you're looking at the future, when it comes to QB1, who's it going to be after what we saw last night?
Yeah, it's quite the change from what we saw or what we felt going into it, right? I mean, you know, with Mac Jones going out and Bailey Zappi playing well over the previous few starts, you're like, okay, this is maybe somewhat of an embarrassment of riches for the New England Patriots, a la what the Washington Commanders had a few years ago when it was Kirk Cousins and RG3. You had 2 quarterbacks that you could kind of choose from that you could win games with. Now you're coming out of it saying, do they even have one? Because it didn't look good for either one of them. Yes, Bailey Zappi had the spark when he came in for Mac Jones. He had the 2 touchdown drives, but he turned into a pumpkin over the last kind of second half there. 3 turnovers. The other 2 possessions were 3 and outs. It just was a real concerning look there if you're the offense for the New England Patriots. And for me, I think that if you're Bill Belichick, you kind of continue to let this thing play out a little bit longer. I know they have this pivotal game with the New York Jets coming up at MetLife Stadium this weekend. I ultimately think that it should end up going back to Mac Jones. I feel like he has the higher ceiling as the quarterback. But if he's not healthy or if he's not playing well, then you can certainly go back to Bailey Zappi. He has at least shown you this season that he's capable of being a spark to this offense, even though last night it was a little bit more fleeting. So for me, continue to let this thing play out. But overall, big picture, you're still extremely concerned about how this thing is playing out because it doesn't feel like either quarterback is kind of latching on and really grasping the opportunity, whether it be Mac Jones kind of coming back healthy and taking the job back away from Bailey Zappi. And then when the opportunity presented Zappi to really kind of take things, he momentarily had a hand on it, but then he kind of fumbled the football.
You mentioned there, of course, they have a big game against the Jets coming up. But if we're looking at this QB room, and when it comes to Bill Belichick, could he mess this up? Because now you have Mac Jones, who started for you last year. He shined a little bit, of course, coming off that injury, coming back into last night, but only 3 drives. Bailey Zappi had the 2 touchdown drives there, but then nothing after that. When you look at that QB room, could you kind of mess up that chemistry there, giving each a shot here, a chance to start?
Yeah, I think there's certainly that possibility. I think that the biggest thing, if they kind of want to, continue this quote unquote competition, is clarity, is communication. Because from everything that we heard last night in the locker room and in the post-game press conferences, there didn't seem to be a uniform conversation about how things were unfolding. Bill Belichick said that the plan was to play both quarterbacks, and kind of the murmuring pregame was that they were going to roll out both quarterbacks. At some point, Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi were going to play, and that ultimately ended up being the case, but it kind of looked like a benching for Mac Jones. Obviously, he went 3 and out in the first 2 possessions. Then he threw that interception, and in comes Bailey Zappi. Belichick said after the game it wasn't due to his ankle that he benched him, and it wasn't due to that interception. It was kind of the plan all along that they were going to have these quarterbacks play that many amount of times. So it's a little bit confusing in terms of the messaging at how they're rolling out this quote-unquote quarterback plan, this dueling pianos version of quarterbacks. Mac Jones said he was aware of the plan. He was on page with it. Bailey Zappi kind of said the same thing. But other players in that locker room seemed a little surprised about how things played out that last night in New England. And so you kind of have to have a little bit more of a uniform approach. Like you were saying, if all of a sudden he kind of continues to kind of be a little bit clouded in his decision making about how he wants to roll this quarterback situation out, you do have a chance to not only break both quarterbacks, but you kind of lose a little bit of faith in that locker room, because they're all starting to ask the question, well, what are we doing exactly?
That really doesn't bode well for the future, because now they're 3-4 in the basement of the AFC East. Look, we know the Bills are the top squad. The Jets are better. Nobody saw that coming. Miami, they just got Tua back. Are the hopes of a postseason here for New England kind of slipping away?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at their schedule. This was supposed to be the easy portion. This was supposed to be the portion where you start racking up wins. And so you can't let a game like this against an inferior Chicago Bears team slip through your fingers. And so, even when we looked at this schedule, you look, okay, maybe they could probably sweep the Jets. I think now you're probably hoping for a split on the season. You do have the Colts in week 9 as they're making a quarterback change. But beyond that, you're looking at weeks 12, 13, 14, 15. All those games are on prime time. Even that Vikings game is on Thanksgiving. That's a gauntlet of playoff caliber teams that you're going to have to face at the end of the season. I mean, even at the tail end, you might have Buffalo resting starters, but you have Miami in week 17 that's going to be vying for a playoff spot. They want to get into this postseason. So for me, it does feel like the postseason for the Patriots. I know it's only week 7. I know we're going into week 8, but it does feel like they are very much on the outside looking in, and those playoff chances are dwindling. At this point, I would focus, with the trade deadline coming up, I would take a really hard look at your roster, look at the likes of Kendrick Bourne, look at the likes of Nelson Aguilar, and those types of pieces that are expendable. Maybe see if you can move those guys to get some assets in your retooling, your rebuilding, whatever you want to call it, and then use these next few weeks, if you really start to fall off, to look at foundational pieces. Figure out if Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones is one of those guys that you can build around. Develop Jack Jones as a legitimate number 1 corner or starting cornerback in your secondary. They have young pieces, but right now it feels like they're a little bit disjointed. And I think that right now it seems a little bit far-fetched that this team, as it's currently constructed and playing, makes the playoffs.
By the way, Robert Saleh would love nothing more to collect a receipt from Bill Belichick in that game when they play the Patriots this upcoming week. As always, Tyler Sullivan, appreciate your time. Pick 6 crew, always dialing it up. Will Brinson, Ryan Wilson, and John Breach taking a look and putting a bow on week 7. Also, that Bears and Patriots match we just saw Monday. The guys touching on Matt Ryan heading to the bench, and James Robinson wearing some new colors, getting traded to the Jets. Download and give the guys a follow.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.